some of these issues, when we have a secularistic tendency, which is to forget God, basically, it also leads to a drift into moral relativism, where people are no longer united in these common values and on what's right and wrong.
What do you think needs to happen to get America back on track?
I think that we need again, a return to moral values. I think we need to recognize the principles that are fundamental for the good of society, for the common good. I mentioned a couple of these principles, one being the transcendent dignity of the human person. And we see that dignity violated by different things in recent decades. The lack of respect for life, human life, the life of the unborn, the life of the elderly in some situations. I think there's also a need to recognize the central role of marriage and the family in as the fundamental cell of society. And when the value of marriage is eroded, that has all kinds of repercussions, all kinds of dangerous repercussions in society. So we need to really promote and strengthen marriage and family. That's the best atmosphere for the raising of children, and that affects everything.
Do you think there are people in Washington, D.C. that are good examples of what needs to happen, or do you see them as more of the problem?
What disturbs me about what's happening in Washington, as I mentioned, is the polarization, especially when there's a lack of civility in debate. I mean, debate is healthy, you know, but we see little progress being made because of the polarization. And I think there needs to be somehow, and it really is a spiritual problem, I think, you know, fundamentally. We have to have respect for one another, even when there are disagreements. And sometimes the rhetoric gets very harsh on certain issues, and that's not helpful. I think there has to be civil discourse, and also that's rooted in our common values.
Do you think, are people too reliant on the government? Do you think more could be done by simply people helping people?
Does government have any role in this? This is where there's debate. Some think the government shouldn't be involved. Others say government needs to be heavily involved. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and, because I don't think that the church on its own, by itself, can provide. We need to have just structures in place, and that's where the role of the government comes in.
What do you think is your role in this?
It's an interesting question. I think as a bishop, of course, my role is to be a teacher of the faith within my own community, but also our voice needs to be heard in the public square, that the church and the bishop have a right to be involved in these issues, because even though we are not partisan, the church isn't involved in partisan politics, many of the issues we're dealing with have moral dimensions. And therefore, I think we have not only a right, but also a responsibility to be engaged in the public debate.